She does not belong here! This is Naismaya's assigned seat. Move her to Kojat now! Her ticket is valid. I have done nothing.
Why are you shouting at my daughter?
I did not know.
Would that change everything?
B. The first insult reached Jordan Ellis before the boarding announcement did. I cannot believe they let just anyone use the priority line now. The words came from behind her, sharp, deliberate, loud enough to travel. B. Jordan did not turn around. At 19, she already understood that some people wanted a reaction more than they wanted the truth. They threw words like stones, then acted surprised when someone bled. B. She sat near Gate 14 at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. B. Both hands resting over a thick aerospace journal. Around her, the terminal moved in restless waves. Suitcase wheels clicked over polished floors. A child cried near a charging station. B. Business travelers spoke into wireless headsets, their voices low and urgent. Beyond the glass, evening settled over the runway. A Trans-American Boeing 777 waited beneath the floodlights. B. Its white fuselage gleamed against the copper sky. Ground crews moved beneath the wings in reflective vests, guiding carts and fuel trucks through the fading light. B. The departure screen read, Flight 442, Atlanta to London Heathrow, boarding soon. Jordan looked at the word London and felt her heartbeat press against her ribs. For most passengers, London was a meeting, B, a vacation, or a connection to somewhere else. For Jordan, it was proof. Proof of every night she had stayed awake after finishing schoolwork, sketching wing surfaces, while the rest of the house slept. B. Proof of every Saturday spent in the public library. B. Because the engineering software there was better than anything she had at home. Proof that a committee of scientists had looked past her age, her neighborhood, and every quiet assumption people made about young Black women in technical fields. They had seen her work, and they had passport. And her SAG was a first-class boarding pass seen laugh about first class that 6 times since arriving 4B. She had checked it 6 times since arriving at the airport. B. Not because she thought it was wrong, because some part of her was still learning that good things could belong to her without apology. Her journal lay open to a page marked with a blue tab. At the top, B, written in careful block letters, were the words microvortex generators and commercial fuel efficiency. Below the title were equations, airflow diagrams, notes from simulation tests, B, and a sentence she had written late one night after a failed model finally worked. B, if air can be redirected, so can a life. Her father had seen that sentence 2 weeks earlier while standing at the kitchen counter. Michael Ellis did not waste words. He had spent nearly 3 decades in aviation. B, first as a young pilot forced to prove himself on every flight, then as a senior captain, and finally as a regional director of flight operations. At work, people described him as controlled and exact. At home, he made pancakes on Sunday mornings. B, he checked the tire pressure before every family trip. He kept an old coffee mug that Jordan had painted for him in elementary school, even though the handle had been glued back on twice. When he read the sentence in her journal, he smiled. That is how lift works, he told her. Pressure changes. Something heavy rises. Then his expression grew serious. People try to tell you where you belong. Do not let their could tell you become your doubt. Do not let their confusion become your doubt. B. Jordan had carried those words with her all day now. She touched the edge of the passport holder through her backpack. Behind her, the same woman spoke again. No, Richard. I told the driver of the international terminal. B. How difficult is that to understand? The voice moved closer. Jordan glanced up. A woman in her late 50s entered the gate area, pulling a glossy carry-on behind her. B. She was tall and carefully dressed in a cream cashmere wrap, tailored slacks, and polished leather shoes. B. Her blonde hair was shaped so perfectly that not a strand seemed willing to move. A large designer tote hung from one arm. Her name was Cynthia Harrington. Jordan did not know that yet. B. She only noticed the way Cynthia entered the space. Some people walked into public places as guests. Others arrived as if the building had been waiting for them. B. Cynthia stopped beside the priority lane and looked at the passengers already gathering there. Her mouth tightened. B. This airport is absolute chaos, she said into her earpiece. The flight is already delayed, and now the line is full of people who clearly do not understand how priority boarding works. A custodian pushed a cart past her. B. Cynthia stepped away as though the man and his cleaning supplies had offended her personally. Jordan watched from behind the rim of her glasses. Her grandmother had always said everyone was carrying something. B. Fear sometimes wore expensive shoes. Loneliness sometimes wore pearls. B. But cruelty had a sound, and Cynthia's voice had it. A gate agent approached the microphone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We will begin pre-boarding shortly, followed by first class and priority customers. B. Jordan closed her journal. Her fingers trembled once. She pressed them flat against the cover until they stopped. This trip was not just about presenting research. B. It was the first time she would stand in a room filled with scientists from around the world. B. And speak as someone selected, not someone tolerated. She slipped the journal into her backpack and stood. Her charcoal blazer was clean and neatly pressed. Her aunt had hemmed her dark trousers the night before. Her black flats were simple, polished, and comfortable. She did not look wealthy. She looked prepared. That should have been enough. Jordan stepped toward the priority lane. At the same moment, Cynthia moved forward. The designer tote struck Jordan hard across the shoulder. Her backpack shifted. The legal pad balanced on top slid free. Pages scattered across the carpet. Equations, diagrams, months of work. Jordan gasped and dropped to one knee. Cynthia did not turn around. Oh, come on, she muttered. People cannot just stop in the middle of traffic like they own the place. Jordan froze, not because of the impact, because of how easily the woman had hurt someone, then rewritten the moment so she could remain the victim. An older man in a brown sport coat stepped out of line and crouched beside Jordan. Are you all right, young lady? His name was Henry Wallace. He was 65, recently retired, and traveling to London to visit his first granddaughter. Jordan nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Thank you. Henry picked up a page covered in airflow calculations. He studied it for half a second. This looks important. It is. He handed it back carefully. Then do not let careless people scatter it. Jordan looked at him. There was no pity in his face, no performance, just recognition, a witness. Sometimes that was enough to help a person stand again. Jordan gathered the final page and rose slowly. Ahead of her, Cynthia was already complaining about the delay. She had no idea representing behind trying her was Retrieved Youth Science, the United States, at one of the most selective youth science gatherings in aviation. She had no idea that Jordan's research had already caught the attention of engineers at two major aerospace firms, and she certainly had no idea that beyond the reinforced cockpit door of Flight 442, the man preparing to command the aircraft was Jordan's father. Jordan adjusted the strap of her backpack. Then she stepped in. The jet bridge. The hardest of claiming a seat was not always in the ticket. Sometimes it was surviving the people who believed you should never have received it. The jet bridge narrowed around Jordan as she walked toward the aircraft. Behind her, passengers moved in a slow line. Wheels bumped over metal seams. Coats brushed against the walls. Somewhere ahead, the low mechanical hum of the airplane grew louder with every step. Jordan held her backpack close to her body. The scattered pages were back inside, but she could still feel the moment in her hands. Cynthia's bag striking her shoulder, the papers falling. The accusation that Jordan had been the one blocking the way. It was a small humiliation. That was what made it dangerous. Small humiliations were easy for other people to ignore. They did not leave bruises. They did not trigger alarms. Simply taught a person, one quiet moment at a time, that their comfort mattered less. Jordan refused to carry that lesson. She slowed near the aircraft door and took one deep breath. The air smelled of rain, fuel, and cold metal. Then she stepped aboard. A flight attendant stood inside the entrance beneath the warm cabin lights. His name tag read Daniel Brooks. He looked to be in his early 30s, with neatly trimmed dark hair and tired eyes that still held patience.
Good evening, he said. Welcome.
Board Jordan handed him her boarding pass. Daniel scanned it with a small handheld device. A green light flashed.
Seat
Seat 4B. First class is just through here on your left. He returned the pass with an easy smile. Welcome aboard, Miss Ellis. The words were routine. Still, they touched something in her. No suspicion, no double check, no long stare at her clothes. Just a name, a seat, and the simple respect owed to a passenger. Thank you, Jordan said. Her voice came out softer than she expected. She turned into the first class cabin. For a moment, the evening at the gate disappeared. Soft amber lighting glowed beneath the overhead bins. Wide leather seats curved around private consoles. Folded blankets rested beside fresh pillows. A faint scent of coffee and polished wood hung in the air. Outside the oval windows, ground lights blinked across the darkening runway. Jordan had seen cabins like this in airline advertisements. She had watched video tours online while studying late at night. She knew how the seat controls worked. She knew where the tray table was hidden. She knew the difference between the reading light and the overhead light. But knowing was not the same as being there. She found row 4, seat 4B, the window seat. Her seat. Jordan placed her backpack in the overhead bin with both hands. She made sure it was secure before closing the compartment. Then she took out her journal, legal pad, passport holder, and pen. Every movement was careful, not because she did not understand the space, because she did. She understood that people noticed mistakes more quickly when they already doubted your right to be present. Jordan sat down. The leather felt cool beneath her palms. The seat was wider than anything she had flown in before. The space in front of her stretched almost absurdly far. She glanced at the window. Her reflection stared back from the dark glass. Young, serious, slightly shaken at the gate. Her glasses sat crooked from the collision at gate B. She adjusted them, then smoothed one hand over the front of her blazer. You made it, she whispered. Across the aisle, a man with silver hair looked up from his tablet. Jordan recognized him immediately, Henry Wallace, the man who had helped collect her research pages. He was seated in 3A, wearing the same brown sport coat. His carry-on had been placed neatly beneath the ottoman in front of him. Looks like we are neighbors, he said. Jordan smiled. It looks that way. Henry glanced at the journal in her lap. First time in first class? Jordan hesitated. Is it that obvious? Only because you still look grateful. He leaned back slightly. Most people stop noticing good things after they have had them too long. Jordan looked around the cabin. I am grateful. Henry nodded toward her journal. London for school? A science symposium. His eyes lifted. What field? Aerospace engineering. At 19. Jordan gave a small, nervous laugh. I know that sounds young. It sounds impressive. There was no disbelief in his voice. No surprise that needed to be explained. Just interest. That simple response loosened something in Jordan's chest. My research is about microvortex generators, she said. Small surface devices that can help control airflow over a wing. The goal is better efficiency under certain flight conditions. Henry looked toward the wing outside his window. So you are trying to help airplanes use less fuel. In a simplified way, yes. That sounds more useful than most meetings I have attended. Jordan smiled again. This time, it stayed. My name is Henry Wallace, he said. Jordan Ellis. A pleasure, Miss Ellis. He returned to his tablet, giving her space instead of turning the conversation into an interrogation. Jordan opened her journal. Mark Page waited for her. The equations were unchanged. The diagrams were still clear. Yet for several seconds, she could not focus on a single line. Her eyes burned. She blinked once, then again. She would not cry. Not because tears were weakness, but because she did not want Cynthia's carelessness to own one more moment of this journey. Passengers continued boarding. Overhead bins opened and closed. Seatbelts clicked. Someone in the row behind her asked about the dinner menu. A couple near the galley debated whether to stay awake for the meal service. The cabin settled around her. Then came the sound of heels, sharp, measured, certain. Cynthia Harrington stepped into first class. She had recovered from the scene at the gate. Her cashmere wrap rested perfectly over one shoulder. Her blonde hair remained fixed in place. The designer tote that had struck Jordan now hung from her arm as if nothing had happened. Daniel greeted her near the door. Good evening, Mrs. Harrington. Welcome aboard. Cynthia barely looked at him. I hope this delay will not affect our arrival. I have plans in Mayfair tomorrow evening. B. We are doing everything we can to leave as close to schedule as possible. I have heard that before. She moved down the aisle, checking the row numbers. 1, 2, 3, then 4. Cynthia stopped. The passenger behind her nearly walked into the back of her carry-on. Her eyes moved to the seat number above the row, 4A, then to Jordan, then to the journal, then to Jordan's simple black shoes. The change in Cynthia's expression was small. B. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something colder. Jordan felt it before the woman spoke. The space around row 4 seemed to tighten. Jordan closed her fingers around her pen. Hello, she said politely. E. Cynthia did not answer. She looked toward the front galley, searching for a uniform. Her bag remained in the aisle. Passengers began to gather behind her. Excuse me, Cynthia called. Daniel looked up. Excuse me, she repeated, louder this time. I need assistance. E. Daniel approached with the same calm expression he had shown Jordan. Yes, ma'am, how can I help? Cynthia pointed towards the seats without looking directly at Jordan. There has been a mistake. Daniel glanced at the row. E. What kind of mistake? Cynthia lifted her boarding pass between two fingers. I am assigned to 4A. Daniel waited. This girl is in 4B. Another pause. Jordan's stomach tightened. Daniel looked from Cynthia to Jordan, then back again. Yes, ma'am. Those are the assigned seats. B. Cynthia's mouth hardened. This is first class. The words hung in the warm cabin air. Simple, quiet, ugly. Daniel's face did not change, but his posture did. Yes, ma'am, he said. This is the first class cabin. B. Cynthia finally looked directly at Jordan. Then she said the sentence she had been building towards since the gate. Then why am I being seated beside her? B. Cynthia Harrington kept her eyes on Jordan, as though the answer should have been obvious. Daniel Brooks did not move. B. For 1 second, the only sound in the cabin was the low rush of conditioned air. Then he said, carefully, Mrs. Harrington, seat 4A is yours. Seat 4B is assigned to Miss Ellis. Cynthia gave a short laugh. It held no humor. I can read the numbers. A man waiting behind her shifted his carry-on from one hand to the other. Farther back, someone sighed. The boarding line had stopped, but Cynthia seemed almost pleased by that. B. An audience made her feel stronger. Daniel kept his voice even. Then I'm not sure what the concern is. Cynthia turned toward him. The concern is that I paid a great deal of money for a peaceful overnight flight. Jordan sat very still. Her journal remained open in her lap, but the equations had vanished from her mind. She could feel every eye that turned toward row 4. Cynthia continued, I should not be expected to spend the night beside a teenager who may have wandered into the wrong section. Jordan looked up. I did not wander in. Her voice was soft but clear. Cynthia barely acknowledged her. Daniel glanced at Jordan, then back at Cynthia. Miss Ellis's boarding pass was scanned at the door. She is in the correct cabin. Cynthia's eyes narrowed, then scanned it again. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. There is no reason to do that. There is every reason. B. She leaned closer and lowered her voice, though not enough to keep anyone nearby from hearing. Look at her. The sentence landed harder than the bag had at the gate. Jordan felt heat rise beneath her skin. Look at her. Not check the ticket, not verify the seat. Look at her, as if her age, her clothes, and the color of her skin were evidence of wrongdoing. Henry Wallace lowered his tablet. Daniel's expression changed. The warmth in his face did not disappear, but it became guarded. Mrs. Harrington, I have looked at her boarding pass. It is valid. Cynthia folded her arms. I have flown this fruit for years. I know how these cabins work. People get unauthorized upgrades. They use family accounts. They manipulate miles. I have read about it. Jordan's fingers tightened around her pen. She wanted to answer. She wanted to tell Cynthia about the scholarship committee, about the research grant, about the months of work that had paid for this trip. She wanted to explain that she had earned every inch of the seat beneath her. But another thought stopped her. Why should she have to offer her life story to make a stranger believe a valid ticket? Daniel held out one hand toward the overhead bin. Mrs. Harrington, please store your bag and take your assigned seat. We need to continue boarding. Cynthia looked at him as if he had failed a test. You are not listening. I am listening. No, you are following a screen without using judgment. The words were polished, but the meaning was plain. Use judgment. Decide who looked worthy. Decide whose documents deserve belief. E. Decide whose presence required explanation. The couple in the row behind Jordan stopped talking. A woman near the aisle slowly placed her phone face down on her lap, then changed her mind and lifted it again. Henry spoke. E. The young lady was here before you. E. She has shown her ticket. What exactly do you want checked? Cynthia turned sharply. This does not concern you. It concerns everyone waiting while you block the aisle. A murmur moved through the cabin. Not loud, but present. E. Cynthia heard it. Her cheeks colored. I am a paying customer. So is she, Henry replied. Jordan looked at him. He did not raise his voice. He did not perform outrage. He simply refused to let Cynthia's version of reality stand uncontested. That mattered. Daniel shifted one step closer to the aisle, placing himself between Cynthia and Jordan without making the movement dramatic. Mrs. Harrington, I'm asking you again to sit down. Cynthia lifted her boarding pass. I want this corrected. There is nothing to correct. Then move her. The words came fast, sharp, final. Jordan's breath caught. Daniel stared at Cynthia. Move Miss Ellis where? Somewhere else. First class is nearly full. Then, premium economy. The cabin went quieter. Cynthia looked around, as if expecting support. She found only guarded faces. One man near the galley frowned openly. The woman behind Jordan shook her head once. Henry's mouth hardened. Daniel spoke slowly. We do not move passengers out of a confirmed cabin because another passenger does not wish to sit beside them. Cynthia's posture stiffened. You are twisting what I said. I am repeating your request. No, I'm asking for a reasonable accommodation. Jordan finally found her voice. Reasonable for who? Cynthia looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. There was irritation in her eyes, but also surprise. She had expected silence, maybe fear, maybe obedience. Jordan sat upright. Her hands were trembling, so she placed the pen down. You hit me with your bag at the gate, she said. You did not apologize. Now you want me moved from my seat. I have not done anything to you. The words were not loud. That made them stronger. Cynthia blinked. I did not hit you. Your bag did. You stopped in front of me. I was standing in line. Cynthia looked toward Daniel. Do you see what I mean? She is being argumentative. Henry let out a quiet breath of disbelief. Daniel's voice became firmer. No, ma'am, she is answering you. For the first time, Cynthia lost control of her expression. Her mouth tightened. Her eyes sharpened. She was not used to being corrected in public, especially by employees she believed should protect her comfort. I want your supervisor. Daniel hesitated only a moment. I can call the lead purser. Do that. And while I do, you need to step out of the aisle. Cynthia did not move. I am a platinum executive member. My husband is Robert Harrington of Harrington Global Logistics. Your airline knows exactly who we are. A few passengers recognized the name. Jordan did too. Her father had mentioned Harrington Global Logistics at dinner the previous week. A cargo agreement. A major review. Something important enough to keep him on a late conference call. She did not know the details, but she understood the irony. Cynthia believed she was speaking to a powerless girl. She had no idea Jordan's father helped oversee the operational decisions that could affect her husband's company. Jordan looked down at her journal. Her pulse was fast now, but her breathing had slowed. Power, she was beginning to understand, was not always the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it was the person who stayed seated while someone else revealed exactly who they were. Daniel returned from the forward galley up with a woman walking beside him. She was in her early 50s, with silver threads at her temples and a posture that seemed untouched by the pressure filling the cabin. Her navy uniform was crisp. Her hair was secured in a low bun. A small gold name tag read Rebecca Collins. She did not hurry. People who understood authority rarely needed to. Cynthia saw her and released a long breath, as if someone competent had finally arrived. Thank goodness. Rebecca stopped beside row 4. Good evening, Mrs. Harrington. I am Rebecca Collins, the lead purser on this flight. I understand there is a concern about the seating. Cynthia lifted one hand toward Daniel. There is more than a concern. Your flight attendant has refused to address an obvious problem. Daniel remained still, holding the passenger tablet at his side. His face showed nothing, but Rebecca noticed the tension in his shoulders. She had worked with him for 3 years. He was patient, careful, almost too careful. If Daniel looked angry, someone had pushed far past ordinary frustration. Rebecca turned towards Cynthia. Please explain the problem to me. Cynthia gestured toward Jordan. I am assigned to 4A. She is in 4B. Rebecca waited. The silence forced Cynthia to continue. I paid for a premium experience, a quiet experience. I should not have to spend an overnight light flip beside a child whose reservation may not even be legitimate. Jordan felt the words press against her chest. She sat upright, both feet planted on the floor. Her journal was closed now. Her hands rested on top of it, fingers locked together to keep them from shaking. Rebecca looked at Jordan, not through her, at her. Miss Ellis was simple. Human. Jordan nodded. Yes, ma'am. Her voice sounded thinner than she wanted. Cynthia rolled her eyes. You see, she's a teenager. You see, Jordan B. Why is she even traveling alone in first class? Rebecca did not respond to the insult. May I see your boarding pass, Mrs. Harrington? Cynthia pushed it forward. 4A, which is beside her. That is the issue. Rebecca accepted the pass, then looked at Daniel's tablet. He angled the screen toward her. She checked the seat map, then the passenger manifest. Then Jordan scanned boarding record. Everything matched. Rebecca spoke with careful precision. Mrs. Harrington, your confirmed seat is 4A. Miss Ellis has a confirmed first-class ticket for 4B. Both passengers were properly checked in. There is no seating error. Cynthia stared at her, then moved her. First class is full. Put her in premium economy. Rebecca's expression did not change. We do not downgrade a passenger with a valid ticket because another passenger objects to sitting beside her. Cynthia blinked. For the first time, she seemed genuinely surprised. Excuse me? Miss Ellis has complied with every instruction. She is seated in her assigned seat. She has caused no disturbance. Cynthia let out a dry laugh. Her presence is the disturbance. The sentence fell hard. Henry Wallace lowered his tablet completely. A woman in row 5 covered her mouth. The man standing behind Cynthia looked away, his face tightening with discomfort. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. No, Mrs. Harrington. The boarding process stopped when you refused to take your seat. Cynthia's cheeks flushed. I will not be lectured by airline staff. Then please listen to the instruction. Store your bag and sit down. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Cynthia looked around. Several phones were visible now. One rested low against a passenger's chest. Its camera aimed toward row 4. Another appeared between 2 seats behind Henry. Jordan saw their reflections in the window. Her stomach twisted. The recordings might protect her later. She understood that. But right now, they made her pain feel public, permanent. Something strangers might replay while eating breakfast or waiting in line. Rebecca noticed Jordan's face. She stepped slightly to the side, blocking one camera's view. Please give the passenger some privacy, she said to the cabin. We are handling the matter. Cynthia seized on the word. Exactly, handle it. She raised her chin. I am a platinum executive member. My husband is Robert Harrington of Harrington Global Logistics. We have significant business with Transamerican. I am not some random passenger you can dismiss. Rebecca met her gaze. No passenger is random on this aircraft. The words were quiet. They carried. Every person here is entitled to basic respect. Cynthia's mouth tightened. Do not lecture me about respect. Then demonstrate it. Henry looked down, hiding the faint movement of approval at the corner of his mouth. Cynthia stepped closer to Rebecca. I want to speak to the captain. The captain is completing required pre-flight duties. Cabin seating is handled by the cabin crew unless there is a safety issue. Cynthia's eyes narrowed. Fine, then perhaps there is a safety issue. The air changed. Daniel straightened. Rebecca's voice dropped. Choose your next words carefully. Cynthia ignored the warning. How do we know what is in her backpack? Jordan stopped breathing. Cynthia pointed toward the bag beneath the overhead compartment. How do we know how she obtained that ticket? I am a woman traveling alone. I am allowed to speak up when something feels wrong. The cabin went cold. Jordan looked toward the overhead bin. Inside her backpack were research notes, a sweater, a phone charger, a paperback novel, and a package of gum her aunt had given her before she left home. Ordinary things, safe things, human things. Yet Cynthia had taken Jordan's existence and dressed it in the language of danger. Henry stood halfway from his seat. That is enough. Rebecca raised one hand. Mr. Wallace, please remain seated. He obeyed, but his eyes stayed locked on Cynthia. You should be ashamed, he said. Cynthia pointed at him. I will not be bullied by strangers. Jordan spoke before she could lose the courage. I did not do anything to you. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Everyone heard it. Cynthia turned. For the first time, Jordan saw a flicker of uncertainty behind the woman's anger. It disappeared quickly. No one said you did anything. I'm asking reasonable questions. Jordan's eyes burned. She refused to look away. No. You are asking why I belong here. Cynthia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Rebecca stepped fully between them. This is now a direct crew instruction. Place your bag in the overhead bin and take seat 4A. Cynthia stared at her. If you refuse, I can ask the gate to locate another seat for you in the main cabin. If you continue blocking the aisle or making unfounded security claims, we will have to determine whether you are fit to travel tonight. You would move me to coach? I am giving you options. This is discrimination. Rebecca's face remained calm. No, ma'am. Her voice was firm now. This is consequence. Cynthia's face turned deep red. Get the captain. Daniel took one step forward. Mrs. Harrington, you need to stop. She spun toward him. You need to remember who pays your salary. A heavy mechanical click came from the forward galley. The cockpit door unlocked. Every head turned. The reinforced door opened a few inches, then wider. A tall man stepped into the cabin wearing a dark navy captain's uniform. 4 gold stripes gleamed across his shoulders. Silver wings caught the amber light. Captain Michael Ellis looked once at Rebecca, then Daniel, then Cynthia. Finally, his eyes reached seat 4B. He saw Jordan clutching her journal. He saw the fear she was trying to hide. He saw the tear sliding silently down her cheek. The warmth left his face. He stepped into the aisle. Purser Collins, he said, his voice low and controlled. Please explain why boarding has stopped. His gaze moved to Cynthia, and why this passenger is shouting at my daughter. Cynthia Harrington stopped breathing for one clean second. The word daughter reached her before pride could block it. Her eyes moved from Captain Michael Ellis to Jordan, then back again. The resemblance had been there all along. The same steady gaze, the same controlled stillness, the same refusal to disappear under pressure. Cynthia had missed it because she had not truly looked at Jordan. She had measured her, age, clothes, skin, status. Then she had built a verdict from those pieces. Now the cabin waited. Every phone seemed to lift a little higher. Cynthia touched the edge of her cashmere wrap. Captain, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. Michael did not blink. That is not what I asked. His voice was quiet. That made it more powerful. Cynthia swallowed. I had no idea she was your daughter. A muscle shifted in Michael's jaw. If you had known, would you have treated her differently? The question landed hard. Cynthia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Henry Wallace leaned back in his seat, his eyes fixed on her. Daniel stood near the galley with his tablet held against his side. Rebecca remained between Cynthia and Jordan, calm and watchful. Cynthia forced a thin smile. That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you meant, Henry said. Rebecca gave him a brief look. He understood. He fell silent. Michael turned toward her. Purser Collins, give me the facts. Rebecca stood straighter. Look, She did not need to check her notes. Mrs. Harrington arrived at row 4 and objected to sitting beside Miss Ellis. She questioned the validity of Miss Ellis's boarding pass. She requested that Miss Ellis be moved to premium economy or the main cabin. Cynthia shook her head. That is not fair. Rebecca continued. After the ticket was verified, Mrs. Harrington refused repeated instructions to take her assigned seat. She blocked the aisle and delayed boarding. She then questioned the contents of Miss Ellis's backpack and stated that she felt unsafe. Each sentence was calm. Each one to Cynthia looked smaller. Michael looked at Jordan. She sat upright with her journal pressed against her chest. One tear had reached her jaw. She wiped it away quickly, almost angrily. He knew that gesture. Jordan had done it since childhood. She never wanted pain to become a burden for someone else. For one brief moment, Michael was not the captain. He was a father who had arrived after the wound. Then the captain returned. Mrs. Harrington, my daughter is 19 years old. She is traveling to London to present aerospace research at an international science symposium. Her ticket is valid. She boarded properly. She sat in her assigned seat. She followed every instruction. His voice dropped. You turned her existence into a complaint. Cynthia flinched. That is unfair. No. What happened to her was unfair. A woman in row 5 whispered, That's right, B. Cynthia heard it. Her face reddened. I am a paying customer. So is she. I paid thousands of dollars for this seat. I have elite status. My husband has major business with this airline. Michael took one step closer. Then you should understand responsibility. Cynthia went still. Money does not give you the right to harass another passenger. Loyalty status does not give you authority over my crew. Business relationships do not allow you to ignore lawful instructions. His eyes did not leave hers. And no passenger gets to create a hostile environment on my aircraft. The words settled over the cabin. My aircraft. Not shouted, owned. Cynthia searched the nearby faces. She wanted one person to nod. One expression of support. One sign that her outrage still had value. She found none. Even the passengers who had stayed silent looked ashamed now. Cynthia's voice sharpened. So what are you saying? That I am some kind of criminal because I asked a question? Michael answered without hesitation. I am saying you interfered with boarding. You refused crew instructions. You verbally harassed a young passenger. You made an unfounded security insinuation about someone who had done nothing except sit in her assigned seat. Cynthia laughed once. It sounded brittle. You are making this personal. You made it personal when you decided her face was evidence. The cabin went silent again. Jordan's eyes lifted. For the first time since Cynthia had entered the row, the pressure in her chest shifted. Not gone, but named. That mattered. Cynthia glanced at the phones. Her anger began to bend into fear. Captain Ellis, I can sit down. We do not need to turn this into a spectacle. I had a long day. I was frustrated. I may have expressed myself poorly. Henry let out a short breath. Poorly. Rebecca looked at him again. This time, he simply shook his head. Cynthia turned toward Jordan. Her smile changed. It became softer, practiced, almost maternal. Jordan, I apologize if you felt offended. Michael heard the word. If so did Rebecca. Jordan looked at Cynthia for several seconds. Her voice was quiet when she answered. You thought I was the mistake. Cynthia's face froze. There was no shouting, no dramatic gasp. Only the sound of truth reaching a place excuses could not protect. Jordan continued. You did not think the seat assignment was wrong. You thought I was wrong for being in it. Michael felt grief and pride rise together. His daughter was still shaking. She was also standing inside herself. Cynthia reached forward. Perhaps she meant to touch Jordan's shoulder. Perhaps she thought a gentle gesture could repair what her words had done. Michael moved instantly. One clean step. His body became a wall between them. Do not touch her. 3 words. Low, final. Cynthia pulled her hand back. Her face went pale. Captain, please. I said, well, sit down. Michael turned to Rebecca. Contact the gate. Ask for the lead agent in airport security. Cynthia's eyes widened. No. Michael did not look at her. This passenger is being denied transport tonight. No, you cannot do that. He faced her again. I can. I have a confirmed first-class ticket. You can discuss reimbursement with customer service. My luggage is already loaded. It will be removed. My husband will hear about this. I expect he will. Cynthia's control cracked. You are abusing your authority because she is your daughter. Michael's expression did not change. I am using my authority because you abuse someone else's lack of power. The sentence cut through the cabin. Daniel reached for the wall phone. Rebecca stood beside him. Cynthia gripped the handle of her designer tote. The audience she had wanted now watched in silence, and for the first time that evening, status could not save her from consequence. Heavy footsteps sounded in the jet bridge. 2 airport police officers appeared at the aircraft door, followed by a gate agent holding a tablet against her chest. The lead officer was a broad man in his mid-40s with calm eyes and a patient expression. His name tag read Kevin Turner. Beside him stood Amanda Lewis, younger, alert, and professional. Kevin looked toward Michael. Captain Ellis? Michael nodded once. This passenger has been denied transport for disruptive behavior, refusal to follow crew instructions, and harassment of another passenger. She is refusing to leave the aircraft. Cynthia stared at him. I am not refusing anything. I am trying to correct an abuse of authority. Kevin turned toward her. Ma'am, the captain has the authority to deny transport on this flight. I need you to gather your personal belongings and step off the aircraft with us. Her grip tightened around the handle of her tote. This is outrageous. Amanda spoke evenly. Ma'am, the decision is final for this departure. Cynthia looked from one officer to the other. You do not understand who I am. Kevin gave a tired breath through his nose. Right now, you are a passenger who has been permitted to leave an aircraft. Please do not turn this into something more serious. That stopped her. Not because serious carried a meaning even status could not soften. The cabin remained silent. To take change. Phones were still raised. But the energy had changed. Earlier, the cameras had made Jordan feel exposed. Now they felt like witnesses. Cynthia looked around one last time. No ally, no sympathetic face, no employee rushing to protect her. Only passengers who had watched her create the very humiliation she now claimed to suffer. Her hand trembled as she lifted the tote from the floor. The cream wrap slipped from one shoulder and hung near her elbow. She did not fix it. Amanda gestured toward the door. This way, ma'am. Cynthia took one step, then another. As she reached Jordan's row, she slowed. For a moment, it seemed she might speak. Jordan looked up. Her eyes were red, but steady. Michael shifted slightly between them. Cynthia saw the warning and kept walking. The sound of her heels changed when she stepped into the jet bridge. On the aircraft carpet, they had clicked with authority. On the metal floor outside, they sounded smaller, harder, exposed. The waiting passengers moved aside. A father holding a sleeping child watched over the boy's shoulder. A college student lowered one earbud. A woman in a navy sweater pulled her boarding pass closer to her chest. They had heard enough to understand. This was not a simple seat dispute. Cynthia kept her chin raised as she walked between the officers, but each step looked heavier than the last. Inside the aircraft, the tension released all at once. People breathed again. Someone near the galley whispered finally. Another passenger shook his head in disbelief. Rebecca picked up the interphone and spoke quietly to the gate. Daniel remained near row 4. He looked at Jordan, then down at the floor. Miss Ellis, I am so sorry. Jordan still held her journal against her chest. The pressure from her fingers had bent the cover slightly. Thank you for helping me, she said. Daniel swallowed. I should have stopped it sooner. Rebecca heard him. She turned from the interphone. Daniel, you verified the seat. You gave clear instructions. You called me when she refused to comply. He nodded, but his expression did not change. Procedure mattered. He knew that. But he also knew how much pain could happen while procedure moved from one step to the next. Michael looked toward Rebecca. Document the exact wording of the security claim. I will. Include the refusal to sit, the obstruction of boarding, and every request to move Jordan. Yes, Captain. Henry raised one hand slightly. You can take my statement. Michael looked at him. For the first time since leaving the cockpit, gratitude softened his face. Thank you, sir. Henry nodded toward Jordan. Your daughter showed more composure than most adults in this cabin. Jordan lowered her eyes. Praise hurt in a strange way. When her body was still waiting for another attack, Michael noticed. He stepped closer and lowered himself beside her seat. The uniform disappeared for a moment. He was simply her father. Are you hurt? Jordan shook her head. Not physically. The answer struck him harder than any visible injury could have. He reached into his jacket and removed a clean handkerchief. He held it out instead of wiping her face himself. Jordan took it. I did not say anything to her, she whispered. I just sat here. I know. I showed my ticket. I was polite. I know. I did everything right. Her voice broke. Michael's eyes darkened with sorrow. I know, sweetheart. Jordan pressed the handkerchief beneath one eye. Then why did it still happen? Michael rested one hand on the armrest, close enough to steady her, not touching without permission. Because doing everything right does not protect you from people who are determined to see you wrong. Jordan looked at him. But it protects something inside you, he continued. Your character, E. Your ability to know who you are when someone else tries to tell you otherwise. Her breathing slowed. Michael glanced at the seat number beside her. You belong in this seat, E. Jordan's lips trembled. Not because I am your father, not because I am the captain. You belong here because your name is on the ticket, because your work earned this trip, because no stranger's prejudice has the power to cancel your worth. Jordan nodded once, small, real. Across the aisle, Henry stood and began to clap. One slow clap, then another. The woman in row 5 joined him. Then the man near the galley, E. A few passengers entering from the jet bridge joined as they understood what had happened. Jordan stiffened. Michael raised one hand. Thank you, everyone. Please give her some peace now. The applause faded, E. Not because the feeling had passed. Because they understood this was not entertainment. It was someone else's pain. Rebecca lifted the public address microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. E. Boarding will now resume. Please proceed to your assigned seats so we may prepare for departure. E. Passengers began moving again. Bags slid into overhead bins. Seat belts clicked. Voices dropped. Most people who passed Jordan did not stare. They looked away. That, too, was kindness. Outside the aircraft, Cynthia stood beneath the bright terminal lights while the gate agent tapped through screens on her tablet. Her privilege had carried her through many doors, not only as far as the consequences waiting on. Under Tumbier, only can stand as far as the consequences waiting on the other side. E. Cynthia stood at the gate counter while the aircraft door closed behind her. The sound was heavy, final. The gate agent, Natalie Price, held a tablet in both hands. She was in her early 40s, E, with tired eyes and the measured patience of someone who had spent years delivering answers people did not want to hear. Mrs. Harrington, you will not be permitted to reboard this flight. Cynthia stared at her. E. I agreed to sit down after repeated refusals to follow crew instructions. E. I was upset. Natalie tapped the screen. The captain denied transport based on disruptive conduct and an unfounded security claim involving another passenger. Cynthia leaned closer. I did not make a security claim, E. I said I felt uncomfortable. Officer Amanda Lewis stood a few feet away. You questioned the contents of the passenger's bag and suggested she might be unsafe, Amanda said. On an aircraft, those words carry weight, E. Cynthia turned toward her. So now I am being punished for expressing concern, E. No, Amanda replied. You are facing consequences for what you did with that concern. The words landed without anger. That made them harder to fight. Through the terminal windows, Cynthia could see the aircraft at the gate, E. Ground workers moved beneath it. A baggage cart stopped near the cargo hold. Her checked luggage was being removed. She watched a worker lift a dark blue suitcase from the belt. Her suitcase, E. The sight made the situation real in a way no argument had, E. My husband has business with this airline, she said. Natalie did not look up. That does not change the captain's decision. Cynthia reached into her tote and pulled out her phone. Her fingers shook as she found Robert's name. He answered on the second ring. Cynthia, the flight should be pushing back. His voice was low and distracted. Papers moved in the background. There was an incident. Silence. What kind of incident? The crew overreacted. There was a seating issue, and the captain made it personal. Robert's tone changed. Where are you? At the gate. You were removed from the plane? The word removed made her flinch. They denied transport. Why? Cynthia turned slightly away from Natalie and the officers, though there was nowhere private to stand. I was seated beside a teenager. She looked very young. I asked him to verify her ticket. Robert said nothing. Cynthia continued quickly. The crew became defensive. Then the captain came out, and apparently she was his daughter. Another pause. What was the captain's name? Cynthia closed her eyes. Michael Ellis. The silence on the line grew heavier. Robert? When he spoke again, his voice had lost all warmth. Tell me exactly what you said. I do not remember every word. Try. Cynthia gripped the edge of the counter. I said, there might be a mistake. I asked whether she belonged in first class. Did you ask them to move her? Cynthia hesitated. Yes, but only because the situation felt wrong. Did you mention her bag? Her throat tightened. I said I felt unsafe. Robert exhaled slowly. Oh my God, The disappointment in his voice frightened her more than anger would have. Listen to me, Cynthia said. The captain abused his authority because she was his daughter. No, you listen to me. His voice cut through the phone. Michael Ellis is not only a captain, he is the regional director of flight operations. He sits on the review panel for international cargo partnerships. Cynthia looked at the aircraft through the glass. Gate bridge had pulled back. I did not know that. Of course you did not. Robert's words were sharp now. You never know who people are before you decide what they deserve. Cynthia swallowed. This can be fixed. Can it? We can apologize. We can call someone. You already had the chance to apologize. I, I did apologize. Did you mean it? She did not answer fast enough. Robert heard the silence. Our company has spent months negotiating an expansion agreement with Transamerican. Tens of millions of dollars, multiple routes, long-term cargo access. Cynthia pressed one hand against her forehead. Robert, I did not know. That is not the problem. His voice dropped. The problem is that you believed it was acceptable when you thought she had no power. The words left Cynthia without an answer. On the aircraft, Jordan watched the ground crew step away from the wing. The seat beside her remained empty. A folded blanket rested on 4A. The pillow was still sealed in plastic. Cynthia's perfume lingered faintly in the air, then slowly disappeared beneath the cabin ventilation. Daniel walked through first class for the final safety check. He stopped beside Jordan, seat belt secure. She nodded, "It's." He glanced towards the equipped seat. "Cynthia, for what it is worth, the entire crew is glad you are still with us." Jordan looked up at him. His expression was sincere, tired, ashamed in a way that did not ask her to comfort him. "Thank you," she said. Daniel lowered his voice. "What happened was not your fault." Jordan looked down at her hands. She knew that. At least, she was trying to know it. The aircraft began to push away from the gate. A low vibration moved through the cabin. Outside, the terminal slid slowly backward. Michael's voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Ellis from the flight deck. Thank you for your patience during boarding. We are completing our final checks and expect to depart shortly." His tone was calm, professional. No one hearing him would have known that his heart was still sitting in row 4. Jordan turned toward the window. Runway lights stretched into the distance, blue along the taxiway, white and amber beyond. The engines deepened. The aircraft began to move. At the gate, Cynthia heard the distant rise of jet power through the glass. Robert was still on the phone. "Take a car home," he said. "Do not contact the airline. Legal will handle this." "Robert, I have damage to contain." The call ended. Cynthia lowered the phone. For the first time that evening, there was no one left to command. No crew member to intimidate. No husband rushing to rescue her. Only the bright terminal lights, the officer nearby, and the reflection of a woman who had mistaken privilege for character. On the runway, Flight 442 stopped for a moment. Then the engines roared. Jordan felt the force push her into the seat. The lights outside became streaks. The ground fell away. Atlanta opened beneath her in gold and white. But the aircraft vanished. Neither did the hurt. But the aircraft kept climbing. And somewhere between the runway and the dark Atlantic sky, Jordan opened her journal and wrote one line. Pressure does not always mean failure. Sometimes it is the beginning of lift. By the time the aircraft reached cruising altitude, the cabin had settled into the strange quiet that follows a storm. The lights dimmed to a soft amber. Window shades lowered. Dinner trays moved down the aisle with the gentle clink of glass and silverware. Yet Jordan could still hear Senna's voice. Look at her. The words had been spoken only once, but they kept returning. They slipped between the lines of her journal. They sat beneath every equation. They turned the empty seat beside her into a reminder. A sentence did not have to be true to wound someone. It only had to find a place where doubt already lived. Jordan closed the journal. Across the aisle, Henry Wallace noticed. He had returned to his tablet, but he was not reading. The same paragraph had remained on the screen for several minutes. He removed his glasses. "Miss Ellis." Jordan looked over. "Yes, sir?" "I hope I did not make things worse by speaking up." The question surprised her. "No, you did not." Henry nodded slowly. "I should have said something sooner." Jordan looked down at the handkerchief her father had given her. It was folded, but Pi was shocked. That is true. Henry looked toward the dark aisle. Henry looked toward the dark aisle. But shock can become an excuse if forgiveness. No request for praise. No request for praise. He was simply naming his own failure. Jordan respected that. She also did not have the strength to comfort him. Henry seemed to understand. He gave her a small nod and returned to his seat. A few minutes later, Daniel appeared with a tray. Would you like something warm? Jordan almost answered no. Politeness had always been her first offense. Need less. Ask for less. Make yourself easy to manage. Then she remembered her father's voice. You belong in this seat. Hot chocolate, please. Daniel smiled. I can do that. When he returned, he placed the cup on a small saucer. 2 short cookies rested beside it. The cookies are from the galley, he said. Not official compensation. Just kindness. Jordan wrapped both hands around the cup. The heat reached her fingers. Thank you. Daniels hesitated. What happened tonight was not your fault. Jordan looked at him. And it was not your responsibility to make Mrs. Harrington comfortable with your presence. His voice was careful, personal. My younger sister is a nurse, he continued. Patients ask for a supervisor, even when her name is on the chart. They assume she is an assistant. Sometimes they speak slowly to her, as if she cannot understand them. Jordan's expression softened. Daniel looked down the aisle. She told me the hardest part is not proving people wrong. It is having to prove yourself at all for 'em. Jordan felt the cup warm her palms. That is exactly it. Daniel nodded once. Then he continued with the meal service, leaving the words behind. They stayed with her. In the cockpit, Michael Ellis watched a line of green instruments glow across the panel. The aircraft was stable. The weather over the Atlantic was calm. First Officer Thomas Avery completed a radio check, then glanced toward Michael. You all right? Michael kept his forward. I am flying. Thomas understood. That answer meant not yet. It meant later. It meant the anger had been folded and stored somewhere safe because 180 passengers needed Michael's judgment more than he needed release. After the checklist was complete, silence filled the cockpit. Michael thought about Jordan at 7 years old, sleeping with a plastic airplane in her hand. She had asked him how something so heavy could rise. Pressure changes, he had explained. Air moves over the wing. The shape turns force into lift. She had stared at him with wide eyes. So pressure can help? Sometimes. Now that memory hurt. He had taught her how airplanes rose. He had never found a way to teach her how to move through the world without being pressed down first. Thomas watched him for a moment. You handled it cleanly. Michael's jaw tightened. Clean is not the same as easy. No. Michael looked through the windshield into the black sky. When she was little, I thought I could prepare her for everything. Thomas leaned back in his seat. Every parent thinks that. I taught her to stay calm, to keep records, to know the rules, to never give anyone an excuse. His voice lowered, and still, someone looked at her and decided she was a threat. Thomas remained quiet. Michael continued. I wish strength did not have to be one of the first things we teach children. Thomas looked toward the instrument panel. Maybe strength is not what you taught her first. Michael turned slightly. Maybe you taught her who she is. Strength came after. Michael said nothing, but his eyes glistened for a moment before he looked back at the controls. Hours later, a thin gray line appeared beyond the wing. Morning. Jordan woke beneath a soft blanket. She did not remember pulling over herself. Her pen was still in her hand. The journal lay open in her lap. Pressure does not always mean failure. Sometimes it is the beginning of lift. She read the words again. This time, they did not feel like something she was trying to believe. They felt earned. Outside the window, dawn spread across the clouds in pale gold. Daniel came down the aisle with coffee and warm pastries. Good morning, Miss Ellis. We should begin our descent into London in about an hour. Jordan sat up. Would you like breakfast? What are the choices? Pancakes or an omelet? The ordinary question nearly made her laugh. After everything, the simple choice felt beautiful. Pancakes, please. Excellent decision. He returned with berries, yogurt, orange juice, and a small jar of maple syrup. Jordan ate slowly while the sky brightened. Near the end of the meal, Daniel stopped beside her seat again. E. The crew wanted you to have this. He handed her a white envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on Trans-American stationery. Good luck at the symposium. The future of aviation is lucky to have you. E. Below it were several signatures: Daniel, Rebecca, Thomas. E. Two other crew members. At the bottom, in neat block letters, someone had written, "Keep rising." Jordan pressed the note between her fingers. Her throat tightened. "Thank you." Daniel's eyes brightened. "You are welcome, E." The landing gear lowered with a deep mechanical sound beneath the floor. Passengers raised their seats. Window shades opened. London appeared below through broken clouds, wet roads, green fields, rows of houses. E. The silver curve of the Thames in the distance. Michael's voice filled the cabin. E. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on final approach to London Heathrow. Heathrow. Jordan leaned toward the window. The runway grew closer. The wheels touched down with a firm, smooth thump. A few passengers applauded. Jordan smiled. Her father would pretend he had not heard it, but she knew he had. As the aircraft taxied toward the gate, Henry leaned across the aisle. "Miss Ellis." She turned. "When you present your research, remember something." Jordan waited. Most rooms are not ready for the people who change them. The words settled deep. When the seatbelt sign turned off, Jordan placed the crew's note inside her journal. Then she stood. The woman at the gate had tried to make her smaller, but Jordan was stepping into London with a steadier back, a clearer voice, and one truth she understood better than before: belonging was not something another person could approve. It was something she carried with her. Itchy. The symposium hall at Imperial College London smelled of coffee, rain, and polished wood. Jordan stood just inside the entrance with one hand wrapped around the strap of her backpack. Students moved around her in quick, confident groups. Some wore tailored jackets. Others carried poster tubs, laptops, or folders, thick folders marked with university names. Professors crossed the marble floor with badges swinging from their necks. The building felt old and important. Stone arches rose above the lobby. Tall windows let in the gray London morning. Every footstep seemed to echo. For a moment, Jordan felt small again, not because of Cynthia. Not exactly. The room itself seemed to ask a question. "Are you ready?" Jordan looked toward the registration table. A large sign stood behind it. Global Youth Science Symposium. Innovation in Aerospace and Sustainable Flight. Her name was printed in the program. Jordan Ellis. United States. Microvortex generators and commercial fuel efficiency. She touched the page with one fingertip. Real ink, real letters. Not a favor, not a mistake. A volunteer handed her a badge. "Welcome, Miss Ellis." Jordan looked down at her name. Presenter. The word steadied her. Her phone buzzed inside her pocket. A message from her father waited on the screen. "Breathe first. Speak second. Trust your work." Jordan read it twice, then a third time. Michael had left the airport for required crew rest after the flight. He had promised to attend the final session if scheduling allowed. Jordan understood the uncertainty. Aviation did not bend easily around family moments. Still, knowing he was trying mattered. "You are Jordan Ellis, right?" Jordan turned. A young woman with dark, curly hair stood beside her, holding the same program. She looked about Jordan's age and wore a navy blazer over a white blouse. "I am," Jordan said. The girl smiled. "Isabella Ramirez, from California." They shook hands. "I read your abstract." Jordan blinked. "You did?" "Of course." "I wanted to know who I was competing against." Jordan looked at her uncertainly. Then Isabella laughed. "I am joking mostly." The tension in Jordan's shoulders loosened. "What is your project?" Composite panels inspired by bird bones. Lightweight, strong, and hopefully less expensive than what airlines use now. That sounds incredible. It sounds incredible because I left out the part where half my samples cracked. Jordan laughed before she could stop herself. The sound felt unfamiliar after the night before. But good. Come on, Isabella said. They have coffee. Is it good? No. But it is free. They walked toward the refreshment table together. Around them, students introduced themselves in careful, excited English. A boy from Japan discussed autonomous inspection drones. Two brothers from Nigeria had designed a system for reducing terminal energy use. A Canadian student demonstrated a new emergency beacon, small enough to fit inside a life vest. Everywhere Jordan looked, young people carried ambitious ideas. Some spoke loudly. Some barely spoke at all. Some had expensive equipment. Others had built prototypes from borrowed tools and donated materials. The sight changed something in her. This was not a room filled with people who had been born belonging. It was a room filled with people building their way in. Near the center of the lobby, Dr. Margaret Reynolds watched the students gather. She was in her mid-60s, with short silver hair and an expression that missed very little. For more than 3 decades, she had worked in aerospace research. Often as the only woman in the room, she recognized nervous brilliance when she saw it. Her eyes paused on Jordan. The girl stood straight, but not comfortably. Her smile appeared and disappeared too quickly. She held her folder against her chest, as if it could protect her. Margaret had seen that posture before. Talented young people often carried two burdens: the work itself, and the fear that one mistake would confirm every doubt placed on them. Margaret made a quiet note to speak with her later. The morning sessions began in a lecture hall with curved rows and a wide projection screen. Jordan sat near the middle. Her presentation was scheduled after lunch. That meant hours of waiting, hours of listening, hours of feeling her heartbeat rise every time a speaker approached the podium. The first presenter, moved quickly through a series of propulsion models. He spoke with confidence, but rushed past several questions. The second presenter lost her place halfway through. For a painful second, the girl stood frozen beneath the bright lights. Then one of the judges leaned forward. Take your time, he said. Explain the graph, as if you were speaking to someone outside your field. The girl breathed, started again, and recovered. The room applauded warmly when she finished. Jordan noticed something important. No one was waiting to destroy anyone. They were listening. Still by lunch, she could barely eat. Isabella looked at the untouched sandwich on Jordan's plate. You need food. I am not hungry. You are terrified. Jordan gave a weak smile. That too. Isabella leaned closer. Nervous means you care. And terrified means you are human. Jordan looked at her. Did you make that up? My mother teaches middle school. That explains it. Jordan took one bite. He took one bite, then another. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from Daniel Brooks. The crew is thinking about you. You already handled a harder room than this one. Jordan stared at the screen. Her throat tightened. One cruel person had wounded her in minutes. Yet several decent people were now helping repair that damage in small, careful ways. She typed back, "Thank you. I will do my best." His reply came quickly. "You already have." After lunch, the auditorium filled again. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows. Dr. Reynolds walked to the front of the room. Our next presenter is Jordan Ellis from the United States. Her research examines microvortex generators and their possible impact on fuel efficiency in commercial aircraft. Jordan stood. The walk to the podium felt longer than it was. Her folder was in her left hand. Her flash drive was in her right. Every eye in the room followed her. Professors, students, judges, strangers. For one sharp second, Cynthia's voice returned. "Look at her." Jordan reached the podium. Her fingers rested against the wood. The screen behind her flickered. Then her title appeared. Her name, her research, her work. Not Cynthia's judgment. Jordan breathed in. "Good afternoon." "My name is Jordan Ellis." Her voice trembled slightly. She paused, then continued. "I want to talk about something small enough to overlook, but powerful enough to change how air moves across a wing." The room grew still. Jordan advanced to the next slide, then the next. She explained boundary layer behavior. She showed the placement of the devices. She described the limits of her computer simulations and where wind tunnel testing would be needed. Her hands stopped shaking when she reached the data. Numbers had always been honest with her. They did not care what she wore. They did not ask who her father was. They only asked to be understood, want a graph, sure. The improvement is asked on one aircraft. The improvement is modest on more sport B. But across an entire fleet, even a small reduction in drag can lower fuel costs and emissions over time. A professor in the second row leaned forward. Dr. Reynolds stopped writing. The room was no longer simply being polite. It was interested. Jordan felt the shift. Her voice grew stronger. The lesson is not that small changes solve everything. They do not. The lesson is that systems respond to pressure, design, and attention. She paused. If we want better flights, we have to study where resistance begins. The sentence meant more than engineering. Jordan knew it. Some people in the room seemed to know it too. She finished. For half a second, the hall remained silent. Then the applause came, warm, steady, earned. Jordan stood beneath the bright lights and let herself hear it, not as rescue, as recognition. The applause did not fade quickly. Jordan stood behind the podium, one hand resting on the edge of the wood, the other holding the small remote. Her final slide remained on the screen behind her. Microvortex generators and commercial fuel efficiency. Her name sat beneath it. No question mark, no apology. Dr. Margaret Reynolds approached first. That was more than a strong presentation, she said. You understood the engineering, but you also understood why it matters. Jordan lowered her eyes for a moment. Thank you. Margaret studied her face. Someone made you doubt whether you belonged in a room like this. Jordan looked up. The older woman did not sound curious. She sounded certain. On the flight here, Jordan said, a passenger thought I did not belong in first class. Margaret's expression hardened. And today, Jordan looked back toward the podium. Today, I knew I belonged here. Margaret nodded. Good. Hold on to that. Some rooms will welcome you. Some will test you. Never confuse the test with the truth. That evening, the finalists gathered beneath the bright lights of the auditorium. Strings streaked the tall windows. Students stood shoulder to shoulder, trying not to show how nervous they were. Isabella Ramirez found Jordan's hand and squeezed it once. Dr. Reynolds stepped to the microphone. This year's Innovation in Aeronautics Award goes to a project that combines technical discipline with real environmental promise. Jordan stopped breathing. Jordan Ellis, United States. The room erupted. For 1 second, Jordan did not move. Isabella laughed and nudged her forward. Go. Jordan walked toward the stage. Each step felt solid. Dr. Reynolds handed her a clear glass award. It was heavier than Jordan expected. Cold. Real. Then Jordan looked into the audience. In the third row sat Michael Ellis. He wore a charcoal suit instead of his captain's uniform. He had arrived quietly after completing crew rest and the required operational paperwork. His face was tired. His eyes were not. They shone with pride. Michael raised one hand in a small salute, a captain's gesture softened by fatherhood. Jordan smiled. The girl who had been told she looked like a mistake now stood before scientists from around the world, holding proof of her own work. Later, father and daughter stood beside the tall windows of Heathrow's departure lounge. Aircraft moved across the wet runways below. Blue taxiway lights glowed through the evening mist. Every few minutes, a jet lifted into the darkening sky. Jordan held the award against her chest. I keep thinking about her, she said. Michael did not ask who. Cynthia. Jordan nodded. I won today. I answered every question. I know I did well, but I still hear her voice. Michael looked toward the runway. What part? The way she looked at me, like I was proof something had gone wrong. Her voice broke slightly. For a few minutes, I believed her. Not completely, but enough to wonder whether everyone else was thinking the same thing. Michael's jaw tightened. That is how prejudice does its deepest damage. It tries to make the person being judged carry the shame that belongs to the person doing the judging. Jordan stared at the glass award. I am still angry. You should be. She looked at him, surprised. Anger is not always wrong, Michael said. Sometimes it is your spirit telling you that something important was violated. The question is what you let that anger build. Jordan breathed slowly. What did you build with yours? Michael smiled faintly. A career, a backbone, and a daughter who can make a room full of engineers lean forward. Jordan laughed through the tightness in her throat screen. He checked the screen. His expression changed. What is it? Jordan asked. He turned the phone so she could read. Transamerican had completed its initial review. Cynthia Harrington's elite status had been suspended pending a final conduct decision. A temporary travel restriction had been placed on her account. Customer Relations and Safety Compliance had opened a formal case using crew reports, gate documentation, and passenger statements. Harrington Global Logistics had requested an emergency meeting with airline leadership. B. At the bottom was a message from the chief operations officer. We fully support your decision. Jordan read it again. Fully. The truth had been recorded. The system had not looked away. B. Michael put the phone back in his pocket. This is not revenge, he said. It is accountability. Jordan nodded. Will her husband's contract be canceled? That review will be handled separately. It has to be. B. Business decisions cannot become personal punishment. Jordan appreciated that answer. It was not dramatic, it was fair, Michael continued. But the incident will matter. A company asking for trust must also show judgment. B. Leadership will decide what the facts mean. B. Across the Atlantic, Cynthia sat alone in the quiet living room of her Atlanta home. The airline's formal notice lay on the coffee table. Passenger conduct violation. Denied transport. Harassment of another passenger. Her status had not protected her. Her husband's name had not erased the record. Robert was in the next room on a conference call with lawyers and company executives. He had not defended her. He had only told the truth. B. You did not lose control because she was powerful, he had said earlier. You lost control because you believed she was not. Cynthia read the notice again. For years, she had treated discomfort as proof that someone else had done something wrong. She had used complaint as authority, status as armor. Now the paper in front of her offered no argument. Only Amiri, wherever she changed, would be her decision. The consequences would be her decision. The consequences were no longer hers to avoid. B. At Heathrow, a boarding announcement echoed through the lounge. Jordan leaned her head briefly against her father's shoulder. I used to think belonging meant nobody questioned you. Michael rested one arm around her. B. What do you think now? Jordan watched another aircraft rise through the mist. I think belonging means you do not abandon yourself just because someone else questions you. Michael closed his eyes for half a second. B. That is better than anything I could have taught you. B. On the flight home, Jordan placed the award safely beneath the seat in front of her. Then she opened her journal. She turned past the equations, past the airflow diagrams, past the sentence about pressure becoming lift. On a clean page, she wrote one final line. The sky was never theirs to give me. Outside the window, the runway lights began to move. The engines deepened. Jordan smiled, not because the hurt had disappeared, because it had not won. B. And if her story reminds you of someone who has ever been made to feel small, share it with them. Respect is not a privilege reserved for the powerful. It belongs to every human being.